Hey, Caraxes. Hey. Hey teachers, welcome back to the channel. I'm Haley at Teacher's Pet. I am a full-time teaching professor for load, plus all the other things we have to do: research, service to campus, advising, mentorship, creative projects, you know the deal. So in this series, it is our weekly retro and reset, where we look back at our past week, what went well, what we might want to change in order to help us plan the upcoming week, keep everything set and straight. So in this series, in this video, we decorate, set up our planners and calendars together. While reflecting, I invite you to go ahead and grab your bullet journal, your planner, your calendar, whatever it is you like to use, as we reflect on our past week. That's going to be April 13th through the 19th, and get ready for our upcoming week. We're almost through the end of the semester, April 20th through the 26th. Let's get to it. So, starting with our retrospective, let's look back at the past week. As a reminder, a retrospective is just a deep dive, right? Moment to stop and think about what our strengths were, what went well, what we need to change, and we do that with 3 key areas and reflection questions. This is a technique that I have all of my students in my classes do for their projects. So every time they turn in an assignment, a project, they also submit a 1 to 2 page, very fast for me to read over and grade, while helping them, be a lot more thoughtful in their decisions, explaining their decisions, their thought processes, and evaluating their own work. I do it as part of my ungrading practices. But with that retrospective, we are first going to look at our just assessment. Did we accomplish what we set out to do, right? Did we meet the objectives of the project, the requirement? Did we meet kind of the objective standards we set for ourselves? Then we're going to do a process reflection, which is where we sit and go, okay, what are the tasks and the steps and the tools that helped us accomplish those goals? What are the things that stood as barriers in the way of us accomplishing what we wanted? And then 3, we stop and think about those lessons learned, and really, what is it that we want to do to carry forward and move forward? So we're going to answer those 3 questions as we go along. Let's get to it. So the first question, right? Looking back at the past week, what is it that you had set out to do last week, and how did you score on those areas? Take a moment and look back, and let's think about it. We'll check in a minute. Looking back at my past week, I actually only had 4 big things. Usually I try to set 4 to 5 things. So I had a talk. I gave a talk for our Faculty Resource Center on an AI Appy Hour, just walking through tools from here at Teacher's Pet, as well as Google Gemini, that I use to really enhance my course prep. And so my goal was for that to go really well. I needed to create all these grading materials for an assignment my students will be turning in this upcoming week. And then I just needed to work on refining some reports for a fellowship, and working on a usability study for some websites. And so in terms of assessing my week, I did a really good job with all of that. Actually, I got done with everything that I wanted to get done. And even looking at my daily spreads, a lot of things, lots of little check marks. There's of course some gaps with stuff that I had to push, couldn't get to. For example, I've been meaning to call for the AC maintenance people, as we're kind of starting to move closer and closer into those warmer summer vibes. Didn't get that done. I'll push it. And actually it started snowing here in Colorado. Our spring goes from 70 to snow. So I'm kind of like, well, maybe I do need to wait on the AC maintenance for a little bit longer anyway. So after that assessment of what it is that we accomplished or maybe didn't accomplish, we want to stop and think about what helped us accomplish that and what got in the way. And so take a second to kind of think about those elements of yourself. And while you're thinking, you can watch me decorate my next week's spread. And some of the things that definitely helped me accomplish my goals, every morning I stop and create my to-do list, stop and, kind of really, I tried to be a lot more intentional in breaking down all the different lines that I wanted to accomplish, having a lot more sub-steps as well. But honestly, for me, the biggest reason I was so productive this week is because I didn't have any grading outside of the small grading. And so, we know some weeks we can't make room to accomplish other things because we just have to grade. That's how my upcoming week will be a little bit as I'm grading a project. But this week I had a lot of that mental space and literal space and time in my schedule to work on these, articles and reports and kind of bigger projects. So those kind of like some key things. Otherwise, I need to just keep, focusing in on walking to campus, working in my office. I have 2 monitors in my office. So, negotiating, advocating for myself to get that second monitor from our equipment and tech refresh. We have a very small budget. I'm at a pretty small school. So, it was a decision I had to really, put together a little convincing discussion pitch with my department chair. But getting that second monitor really helps me accomplish so much more. So if you only have 1 monitor or no monitors, you're just working on a laptop, consider, right, and maybe make a plan for how you can get that equipment that you need in order to, help it boost your productivity and make your work life a lot better, a lot stronger. All right, so the last thing that we want to do is think about, right, those lessons learned. What do we want to do moving forward? That definitely helped us, and start to think about how we can be productive in the upcoming weeks. And so for me, my lessons learned as I'm looking back over my last week's journal, is, definitely I And And so sometimes our lessons learned are, kind of big stuff, where we have really big moments. The last few weeks I had a few of those of creating writing blocks and all of that I want to continue moving forward. I found that I just work best when I write in like maybe 30-minute chunks, especially in the mornings, kind of in between tasks. But one of the smaller things that actually I've been really enjoying this week, that's helped me do a lot of small chores and get small tasks done. I have found that like a new podcast. I'm a real podcast and audiobook kind of person. And so listening to those while I'm doing tasks, makes every single task better for me and more productive for me. But specifically, I found one of every single album, and I went all the way back to how they started was every single album Taylor Swift, and they just kind of like talk about it. But I have been having a fun time listening back to those old albums from her while I'm doing work, and just kind of great playing in the background, pausing, thinking, and then I get to listen to the hour and a half podcast where they talk about that album. And so for me, right, finding media that I enjoy, that also is that perfect balance of engaging, but can kind of get lost in the background as I am starting to like focus in, really helps with my workflow and get me in the zone. So that's going to be something I continue doing, right? There's a lot of albums, a lot of hours of content, honestly, in that. So I think it's going to really help me in the upcoming week. All right. That was our little retrospective. Always stopping to think about how we achieved those objectives. How did we actually get there? Like, what was our process? And what's one or two things specifically that helped us we want to try moving forward is a way to set ourselves up for a strong upcoming week. And if you like this activity and you think that it's helpful, consider implementing it into your classrooms to help your students think a little bit more intentionally about their work, and consider, sharing this video with another teacher, grad student, professor, educator, administrator that you think, would enjoy and benefit from sitting down once a week to think about that. Also, drop a like and a comment for our community, and let's start building up and celebrating each other with some of those accomplishments and the tips that are helping you get through. Now, the second half of our series is just time to decorate our planners and journals together while we look ahead and think about what comes next. So you can pop in, and if you would prefer to do your planning without me talking at all, and reflecting without me talking at all, you can grab just the simple decorate and chill video without any commentary or narrative from me. Just some vibes and ASMR music to decorate. Otherwise, hop into your journals and let's, fill out our next week together. So this is April 20th through the 26th for my semester. That is week 14. And in week 14, my classes are focused on verbal presentations and different forms of presenting research. So it's slide decks, it's research posters, it's pitches. We do record it and talk about speaking live. I don't teach public speaking, right? So my emphasis, and actually the project my students will be submitting, is a recorded 3 to 6 minute pitch presentation of a solution they've researched to an issue specific to their field. And with that pitch, I actually also run a poll. And so I pick the top 5, based on grading, rubrics, assessment. And then with their permission, if they're interested in participating, I then open up a poll with those top 5 for the class, the entire kind of roster. And all my students watch each other's pitches and vote on, whose pitch basically they think is best, like who has the most persuasive, innovative, interesting, well done, engaging presentation. And that winner gets extra credit. And then all top 5 people, I make a little certificate that they can put in their portfolio, just saying that they, placed in the top 5 out of my, roster of 60. With their presentation. So I think that's always kind of like a little fun thing that I like to do and run, while also giving my students a chance to, watch how other people put together their pitches. So that's kind of the big thing that I am up to. In terms of the soundtrack I'll be using for this week and all of my workshops and classes, it's called Film Scores to Study vibes, basically. You can grab it in the description from Spotify, and it's what it sounds like. I just pulled together a lot of different, like film and movie and a few TV shows also sneak in there. And it's just the scores and soundtracks to, help us kind of focus up as we are wrapping up the semester and some of those big projects are coming down the line. My vibe for this spread is definitely very springy. I'm enjoying that weather, and so I'm thinking about and seeing all the blooms and flowers outside. So I wanted my planner and spread to reflect that. Now, in terms of the my kind of motto saying for the week, as we are getting into these warmer, happier, summer is coming, so I wanted to be upbeat, but also I am in that point where I'm excited for the semester to reach its conclusion, but I'm also having to do a little bit of performing and masking how kind of burnt out and a little bit over the semester I am for my students, put on that really strong face for them as we finish. So I have the quote to remind me, watch me dance the night away. I stay on the beat, you can count on me. I ain't missing no steps. Because he said, it just reminds me that's from the Barbie movie. And as teachers, we know it does get to the point where we're human, and I do think it's good to let some of our lived experience and emotion show for the students, but we also do have to, constantly kind of be on and what I do think of as performing for them and, make lectures as engaging and great as possible and put on this very kind of positive affect all the time, I feel like anyway, to help them stay motivated and encouraged and interested. One of the comments that I get a lot in my course evals is, that my enthusiasm for the subject helped to make the class a lot better, which is great, and I love that feedback. But it has also kind of created this cycle for me, especially when we get to the end of the semester, where now I feel like, I always need to, bring it no matter what I'm going through, right? Always be kind of performing, don't, miss any steps, especially at the end of the semester, to really make sure my students get through as well. So, kind of a double-edged sword there, but that's kind of how I'm feeling, and that's what is reminding and driving me in my planner this week. Otherwise I have my typical stuff, do my weekly resets, I'll get that done this afternoon on Sunday. And looking ahead, my week is interesting. So I have my classes and all my normal stuff. And then my campus, we are hiring a new dean of my college. And so the candidate open forums are this week. And I definitely am going to prioritize, sitting in or listening to the virtual Zoom session so I can provide some feedback and input on, what is the direction of leadership for my college. But otherwise, pretty chill overall as we kind of go through. All right. I hope that you are all set for your week. Before we go, the last thing that I want you to think about is our special challenge prompt. And so this week we're going to refresh our algorithms. So as you are going through, kind of take inventory of your social media, as well as your other content. Maybe it's your Netflix, algo. For me, right, it was on Spotify, finding that new podcast and refreshing what I wanted to listen to was really helpful. So keep doing that across all of your platforms. Just kind of see, is there some new person, account, type of content, topic that you want to follow? Is there new music that you could listen to, a new genre, find a new podcaster, branch out to maybe a new book, and just refresh what gets fed and recommended to you as a way to do a little spring cleaning on our digital presence and give us something to look forward to and really boost and shake up the end of the semester. All right. Thank you, teachers. I hope that you have such a fantastic week. I hope that your planners are all set up as we reflected and reset for the week. I feel, again, excited, a little bit burned out, but feeling pretty positive and great. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a great class.